everybody out there in the void. I'm finally back again. The fat angry gay is no longer with us. He'll be kind of missed. If you want to find out more about that, you can go check out our last live stream. You know, and why aren't more of you watching any of my videos, let alone the live streams? Anyway, but today, I will be coming back to do the Brian Holdsworth, excusing pedophiles from the Catholic Church stuff. That will be happening. I want to give a little space for the production now that the Fat Angry Gay is no longer part of the channel. So I'm going to do this little 4-part series, depends how long the second video takes to do. Oops, there's a second video. And so I guess the first video, the one we'll be doing today, is a little documentary thing he did a few years ago or whatever, about the Garden of Eden. And this is fun. He tries to explain exactly where the Garden of Eden is. He really thinks he's pinpointed it. So that's fun. And then the video, that's going to be 2 parts. The video after that is going to be him saying why us atheists can't accept proof. And wow, that's a doozy, especially after you watch this. So this should be fun. I guess we should just start, shouldn't we? And don't forget to like and subscribe. You know, if you haven't already subscribed, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, just because I'm a shitty small channel and I could really do with a boost in the algorithm. And you know, if you care enough, I'm on Twitter at rshakenfist. On Twitter, so go and you can see me sometimes harass theists. In fact, to be honest, the more engagement I get on stuff like that, the more I'll be likely to do things. Like, I have a poll in the community section of the channel where I intend to start doing a full read through of the Bible and pointing out where it's dumb and where it isn't. And I'm just asking the humble question of where would people like us to start? Where would you like me to start? Would you like me to start at Genesis at the beginning, or start with Jesus where it really matters? Like and subscribe and all that good shit.
Just say the word and you're forgiven, and have no fear 'cause he is risen. Before you realize the rapture ensues. In this world in front of the earth becomes a fading memory. Rejoice just as the choir sings. Rejoice now. Tell me of a gift under the desert sun, and it only makes you stronger when they're fucking with your head. When they're fucking with your head. And it only makes you stronger. Forgiveness, it helps you when you're dead.
The Bible begins its story in a land called Eden, a place which was said to be an earthly paradise. But many believe Eden was nothing more than a fairy tale, invented by Jewish writers as part of a fanciful legend. Was Eden a real place, or nothing more than a fantasy?
Well, of course it's not a real place. You know, only fundamentalists think it was a real place, and I didn't think inspiring philosophy was a fundamentalist. Because I suppose if you were a fundamentalist, and you believe in Eden, you'd also have to explain how the 7 days of creation definitely happened in that order and stuff. But you know, hey, that's not this video, so it doesn't matter. But we're going to talk about, is it myth? Well, yes, it is a myth. It's a creation myth. Not just myth as in, it's not real, it's made up. It's myth as in, like, genre. So, if you want to talk about Eden, we got the Abzu, right? So you got the Babylonian version of the Abzu, which is just a god. Doesn't matter, you know. But the Abzu that the Sumerians made in Mesopotamia, well before the Jews, well before all of them. It's the Sumerians. They're very, very old. They had a city called Eridu. I believe it's Eridu.
Yes.
And Eridu had this. It was kind of, you know, middle of the Tigris and the Euphrates, middle of a floodplain, blah, 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 blah. Also had a temple deep underground. deep underground. They got bigger and bigger as it went on, because it was supposed to be the home place of their god, the god of civilization, the thing that created civilization, Enki. So Enki resided there in the Abzu, which was, kind of like Leviathan, this big, water monster type thing. He conquered it, cut it apart, lived in it, became a stream that brought forth the waters of civilization to Eridu, the first city, but all that stuff, right? And then down the line, the Jews also hear about this sort of thing, because, they're the Hippiru or the Abiru, whatever, and you're living in amongst Canaan, and you're a nomad, and you go down into Egypt, or you go into Mesopotamia, where you hear things, don't you? So then you start hearing stories about the Abzu and stuff like that, and, you don't want to take that for yourself? Because the earliest version of Genesis is only from the 7th century BCE, well after all of it. But of course, an astute Christian as yourself would know about the formula, the writing of your own holy document, wouldn't you? Of course you would. But of course, you're going to say that, oh, it's not a myth because it's in my most special holy book. Oh, well done.
The description of the land of Eden in Genesis 2 is a peculiar one. It mentions a land that would be a lush paradise in an area of the world that today is a vast desert. And yet, God is able to plant a garden that is even watered by a mist that comes up from the ground, so it mentions the lack of need for rain. Even stranger is the author tells us a river flows out of Eden and splits into 4 other rivers. 2 of them are known.
So we know about the Tigris and the Euphrates, which flooded all the time, and created a floodplain for the ancient Mesopotamians, Sumerians, Syrians, Babylonians, Neo-Babylonians. It's all there. Swimming knives, they're all there.
Sharks, jellyfish, swimming knives, they're all in there.
Whatever. And then we have the Ghihon and the Pishon, and you say there are only 2 known ones. Well, we know what the Ghihon is. Do you? I don't think you do. I mean, this video is a little old. Maybe he's been instructed. I don't know. The Ghihon, my friend, was a spring in the original Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem now isn't necessarily where Jerusalem was back in the day. And the spring that fed them was called the Ghihon. Because, spring of life and all that. So, maybe somebody was creating a religion and creating a mythology behind them would want to link the birthplace of civilization and them, being that they are taking people's gods and myths for themselves. They want to lay stake over it. So then they also got to, so you put in your own river, don't you? No, you know what I mean? You put in your own river. It's not even a river, it's just a little tiny spring. It just fed Jerusalem with water is all.
The Tigris and the Euphrates. But the other 2 rivers, the Pishon and the Ghihon, don't seem to be actual rivers that flowed out of the same area. The Ghihon River is said to flow around the whole land of Kush. Kush was traditionally understood to be present-day Ethiopia, and we have no evidence of a river which used to flow from Turkey into Ethiopia. We also don't really have any evidence the Tigris and the Euphrates were once one river that split into 2. All of these issues have caused many scholars to refer to Eden as a mythical place that didn't actually exist, but was just a fantasy created by the Jewish authors.
So, I was saying about how the Jewish authors like to steal stuff. So you can talk about Enki and Eridu. Well, in the Bible, Enki and Eridu are in the Bible. They're people, by the way. They're actually called Enoch, who is Enki, and Irad, which is Eridu, and they try and lay claim over them as some of the first people. Funny that. Really weird that. It really is, isn't it? If you actually look into things and look more past a base level that is, well, I want to believe, so I think I can go to heaven. It fills me with such warmth. I know the things don't make sense if I look into them, but I won't look into them because it makes me feel so warm and special inside. Also, let's just say that Eden was true. God made Eden. You're not supposed to find Eden, didn't he? So maybe the directions, they're all gobbledygook. Maybe they're not meant to mean anything. maybe they're meant to be things that, like, the Ghihon that goes into, like, the other place that is actually in Jerusalem. Well, you don't follow the Ghihon to go, into the land of the Kaziites. It's in Jerusalem. It's a foolish thing. It's like saying, well, first you go to the Nile, and then you take a right and you go down the Mississippi. Maybe they're supposed to be silly, so you're not supposed to look for it, because Eden is a restricted land that God kicked us out of, apparently, didn't he? So maybe we're not supposed to go back there. So the idea of trying to lay breadcrumbs to be able to find the place that you have been banished from God is so silly it would be impossible, because if God doesn't want you to do something, it's impossible, isn't it? But no, I want Eden to be real. I want it to be real so badly, so I have to make up things.
But perhaps the problem might not be with the actual description of Eden, but where we have been looking and how the passage has been translated.
Oh, of course, the problem isn't that it's a fairy tale. The problem is that we haven't translated it correctly from the 7th century BCE. All those translations, the Septuagint, all of them, they were all wrong, just down through the ages, one after the other. Well, the Greeks did it, they were wrong. The Romans did it, they were wrong. It was just all wrong. The translations were wrong. Do you know when the translations were wrong, by the way? When did the translations start being wrong? Because did God give us a divinely inspired document so it was 100% true? And then through bits of mistranslation, it makes it not true. So if that's the case, would you like to point out when that is? Where is the clear delineation between what is real and what isn't? The translations were real post when? What, before Ezra edited them? Well, come on, we have versions of documents handed down through the edges. Would you like to point at any of them and say when it started being wrong? Or did everything we find in the world start to prove you wrong? So, well, God's word is, God's word is always correct, isn't it? So then it must be of course it must be the translations are wrong. It can't be the fact that you're following silly Bronze Age beliefs. Couldn't be that. It couldn't be a religion that was created from a bunch of nomadic people that slowly conquered through assimilation another civilization and then took bits of the Canaanite religion into those and all this different stuff down the line. None of that happened, and it's all just mistranslations. Was it mistranslated from Hebrew into Greek? Hebrew into Latin? From Greek into Latin? From Hebrew into Coptic? Which one? Or was it into English, the devil's language? The language that we used to be killed for reading the Bible, the devil's language. Well, it's okay now, apparently. So is it that translation? That's why it's the devil's language? Because it's only the English one that fucked it up so much, isn't it? It couldn't be the fact that idiots came along and went, you know what? Well, we can't say Yahweh, but we want to know what it says. They don't say his name. All right, so we'll take the letters Yahweh, and then they added some vowels. But those are just dots, and we don't know anything about the Hebrew language, so we'll just add them together. It's not supposed to be Yahweh and Lord or anything like that put together, so it's unpronounceable. But hey, Christians know better, so you can translate it better into Jehovah, because you're clever. Is it that kind of mistranslation? Or is it the kind of mistranslation that says, well, young woman, virgin, should it be from above? or what was it? Jesus said, I will be born again, or I shall be born from above. And those mistranslations, which one was it? I'm wondering.
We have to remember the Earth is not static and is always changing. The planet we live on now was not the same 100,000 years ago, let alone 15,000 years ago. In fact, about 14 to 15,000 years ago, the continents were much larger. This was because the polar ice caps contained much more frozen water, which allowed more areas of land to exist that are now covered by vast seas and gulfs. One area in particular is the Persian Gulf, where the Tigris and Euphrates now flow into. However, this was not the case about 14,000 years ago. The geography of prehistoric Sumer was quite different. According to modern satellite imaging, the Tigris and Euphrates used to connect and form one river that went through a habitable land at the bottom of the Persian Gulf.
Adam and Eve 15,000 years ago. It's before the agricultural revolution. So maybe Adam and Eve really was just a story of ancient Hebrews remembering being a fucking, hunter-gatherer. Like, come on, dude, really? Well, ancient Sumer, 15,000 years ago, wasn't in the Persian Gulf. You could tell by the way that we found all the tells. The tells are the mounds that the cities were built in. They build on top. They'd be destroyed or build on top of each other, and it just became a giant fucking pyramid-based thing. And basically, the cold tells. And so basically, all of them we found all of them under the Persian Gulf, all of them, because that's where ancient Sumeria was. It was under the Persian Gulf. It wasn't in Iraq at all. It was under the water. Because, God flooded the world, and well, I know it's climate. It's climate change or whatever, but hey, it flooded because God made a flood, and then the water couldn't get to the things that were dropping the water down into the fucking earth. The vents opened up, and the water goes down, and just that bit didn't. Sorry, excuse me. So the God makes the world flood, and then the vents open up, and then the water goes into them. But the bit in the Persian Gulf, you see, it just didn't go away. So all that stuff underneath there is lost forever. We couldn't possibly go down in a submarine and find Eden. Apparently under the Persian Gulf, because that is definitely where Eden was. Because that's what the Bible says. And God spoke and said, Adam and Eve, you are a pair of bitches. I have told you not to eat my fruit, and you have. Get the fuck out. I'm flooding this place. You'll never come back here again. That's totally what happened in Genesis, wasn't it? He didn't leave, it standing there with an angel, with a flaming sword or anything. But it's funny. It's funny, I found a map from the University of California mapping what the Persian Gulf looked like. And it looks a bit different than what you have on yours. Do you not reckon? Just a little bit different? Do you not reckon it's a bit different? And if that's the case, then where did you get your information from? Did you make it up? Did you just say, well, it would be nice if it... Because I'd looked for ancient maps, some satellite imagery that would concord with the bullshit map you've made of the Wadi Patan and all these different rivers and all that. Just weird, I haven't found your version of it anywhere. Did you make it up from yourself, or did you nick it from another Christian? Because, they're always the most reliable for scientific information.
But these were not the only rivers. In fact, there were many other smaller rivers that flowed into this one river as well. One larger river that also drained into this area has been called the Wadi Batin River, which used to run through the land of Arabia. However, in the ancient world, this area was called Havilah. This region also shows evidence of vast gold mines, especially in the area called Mud Adaheb.
So, Havilah is a place that's only found in the Bible. Nowhere else. Even the maps in the Bible say it's in a couple places. He even points it out later on. You notice that he points out later on that it could be in a couple different places after he asserts that this is where this river is. Because, that's the way to mislead people into believing what you want them to believe. Anyway, so outside of the Bible, there's not one record of the term Havilah being a place anywhere in the region, anywhere that we've found in any piece. Not even the Telemana left us. Nothing. Zilch. Nada. Fucking zero. Right? And then this place had signs of mining. It's one of those things. See, the fun thing about this is it's one of those things that lets you know how false the Bible is. So, Genesis was probably written around 8th, 7th century BCE, probably around the time of King Josiah, when he kind of rewrote a lot of it. Anyway, there's older bits of the Pentateuch, the Song of the Sea and stuff like that comes from older texts. Some of this stuff is, pieced together from older texts. But I'm going to talk about, the mining, the mining. This is why it's interesting. So the mining, there was no signs of mining there until around 950 BCE, which was 50 years after David supposedly lived. So the idea that the idea of mining being there beforehand is silly. because it was written afterwards, and they just thought, well, you know, it's always been this way. It's like when it talks, it's like later on in Genesis when it talks about Abraham riding camels, because camels were only introduced into the area in around the 8th century BC. But, you know, this is supposed to take place hundreds of years beforehand, so it wasn't there. But, you know, hey, you can say, well, you know, they wrote it later and put it in to let you know, did they? Because if they didn't know where it was, and that was written later, they're just making shit up to make it seem more plausible, aren't they? But hey, we can put the Jesus blinders on and it's 100% real, okay? Unless some other Christian scholar says it's not.
However, the river dried up thousands of years ago, roughly around the same time climate changed, transformed the region into a desert. But long ago, this would have been a lush river that drained into the same river as the Tigris and Euphrates. Surprisingly, if we go back in time enough, this correlates to the account of the Pishon River flowing into Eden in Genesis 2 quite nicely. Dr. James Hoffmeyer says, a possible candidate for the now defunct Pishon River was discovered with the aid of shuttle imaging radar technology. It evidently flowed east from the mountainous Hijaz region of Saudi Arabia. Dr. Farouk Elbaz, the geologist and director of the Center for Remote Sensing at Boston University, discovered traces of its course beneath the sand with ground-penetrating radar images from the space shuttle. James Sauer immediately saw the geographical connection between this ancient river and the description of the Pishon River in Genesis 2. This river appears to have dried up sometime late in the 3rd millennium BC. The fact that Genesis 2 knows about this river is remarkable indeed.
Yes, very remarkable. Very remarkable that the Bible knew that you and the man who wrote that book would look at some satellite imagery and put the two together and say that's the proof. You see, I found a riverbed and it's vaguely in the area I want. And if I search through enough history, it'll have the things around it that I want. So it must be that. Let me let Robert Miller talk instead, because if we're going to bring scholars into it, we might as well bring any scholars we want. So here we go. What does Robert Miller III have to say about this?
And then we have an extensive description of Eden. It's very strange. Verse 10, a river issues from Eden to water the garden, and then it divides and becomes 4 branches. The name of the first is Pishon, the one that winds through the whole land of Havilah, where the gold is. The name of the second is Ghihon, the one that winds through the whole of the land of Cush. And the name of the third is Tigris, the one that flows east of Assyria. And the 4th river is the Euphrates. I left out verse 12. The problem here is that we know where most of these places are. It would be easier if we didn't. Pishon and Havilah, we don't know. The Ghihon is a little stream in Jerusalem. There's no way to describe it as wandering through the whole of the land of Ethiopia, which is Cush. The Tigris and Euphrates are the rivers of Mesopotamia. There's no way to make them branches of a river in Jerusalem, yet alone in Ethiopia. And even the little details are wrong. The Tigris doesn't flow east of Assyria, it flows west of Assyria. What's being said here is the equivalent of this. You want to know where Eden is? I'll tell you where Eden is. It's where a river comes out that splits in 4. And one branch is the Rio Grande that winds through Ohio. Another branch is the Missouri, which flows west of the Rockies. And another branch is the Little Paint Branch Creek, which happens to be in my backyard. But I'm going to tell you that here it irrigates all of Oregon. And the thing is, most Israelites reading this would realize how bizarre these directions are. And I think the point of this bizarre travelogue is precisely to keep people from trying to find Eden, because there's no way to match these rivers up.
Wow, he says that it's like you're not supposed to know where it is and it's an impossible map. Wow, it's almost like you could look to any scholar for any opinion you want, and that's why we reach scientific consensus. And with consensus, we don't need to cherry pick whatever scholars we want to say whatever the fuck we want, do we? We have a solid bedrock of information that is found through constant testing and retesting and stuff like that. Instead of just, well, if I work back from the solution, God is real, then I can make anything fit. Because, well, you don't need proof. You just need conjecture. Well, if I make it look like it does, well, then it must be, because I'm trying to convince people that are idiots. And people that are, like, already believers, or people that are sad, but, you know, just really want someone to touch them in the heart. Breaking news! I've been editing, and I was just recording that little lovely bit of Frank Miller's bit from talking about Eden. And, you know, it's a fascinating listeners, and the whole thing's really good. And he's a Christian as well. Maybe not your type of Christian, but... Anyway, he said something interesting that kind of tweaked my brain. You want to talk about that the Wadi Batan is the Pishon because it comes from a land of gold. It comes forth from a land of gold, do you not know? From Mad Adahab. I can't say things in Arabian. But then when I was listening to that little clip there, he said, well, I just ignored verse 12. And when he ignores verse 12, it says something, it speaks to me. It speaks to my inner being. You know what I mean? It just cries out. So I had to film this. You can tell that the whole background's different because I'm making everything better now. Anyway. Where's 12? The name of the first is the Pishon. It is one that skirts the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And that gold, and the gold of that land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are there as well. So, I decided that what I should do is I should have a little look at, because what actually comes out of the Arab mine, and you know what? You, being the fastidious researcher you are, made this a lot easier, because you said you put a little bit on the screen there. So you actually put on this geology and ore report, right, from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it talks about the sort of things that are in the mine. The principal ore minerals are pyrite, chalcopyrite, sphalerite, galena, and minor tetrahedrite, argonite, and native gold and silver. Do you know what none of those are?
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
Onyx, bdellium ores, and you know, when I did a little bit more research, what it said was actually, if we wanted to find, I don't know, say bdellium or whatever, what we should actually do is look closer to the Red Sea on the other side of Arabia, closer to Egypt, in the land of Kush. Funny that. Also, when we do a little bit, when I did a little bit of digging into onyx, because onyx is about. It actually, I found a place that's onyx did come from Saudi Arabia. So in antiquity, onyx did come from the Saudi Arabia region. More came from Yemen, actually, and not Saudi Arabia, and nowhere near the Mud Arab and region or the Wadi Batan River. It's in Yemen, and actually. The Shiban Mountain is actually where we found most of it, and those were really mined around 4th to 5th, somewhere between the 5th and 3rd century BCE. It's almost like you're pulling it out of your ass, and you deliberately omitted the other minerals that are said in the Bible, right? Because you didn't think people would actually look up what it says and notice that, well, 1 out of 3 ain't bad, yo. Perhaps you are a liar, and maybe liar is strong. Maybe so you worked so hard in your religious fervor to prove what this thing that you found, that James Sauer said, or Kitchen, or whatever, that this has to be true, so the obvious things can be ignored, because, well, they're only little details, right? They're only little details, and I don't know, it's almost like the Bible keeps on telling you that you should follow all of the laws, even to the tiniest detail, and you don't really want to do that, do you? You just desperately want to own atheists in such a way that you think sounds so fucking clever and astute, because, well, these bog standard atheist dickheads, they're not going to come along and try and debunk me ever, because I've done my research. Well, I did actually come along and decided to debunk you, and you're a fucking idiot. You're an idiot or a zealotous fucking liar who really wants to push forward the narrative that Christianity is real at literal any cost, because, well, apparently spreading the word of Jesus is more important than whether it's true or not.
Of course, what about the alleged
Allegedly.
Ghihon River that allegedly went into Ethiopia?
And it's not at all the spring that gushes forth from the ground to the original site of Jerusalem. It's not there to show the connection between David, the king of God, the city of Jerusalem, and God from the waters that come from Eden. Maybe if we knew some things like that, maybe we'd know some more about how these religions actually came about, instead of trying to put them into 20th century context. Everybody loves putting 21st century context. I'm very old. I mean, have you seen the Mesopotamian map? We don't even know how these people thought the world looked properly. Have you seen the was it the Mesopotamian map? I think it's a Babylonian map, right? It doesn't. It's like a map of where Eridu is. It's like, because it's in an island surrounded by water. It's not. It wasn't. But hey, those people were really trustworthy when it came to geography, weren't they? So we should trust them implicitly, because God says so. But, you know, you found a riverbed that kind of vaguely goes in the direction you want. Except it doesn't even go in the direction you want. You know, you're going to go into it in literally a minute or two. So we'll come back to that. And we'll just go back to that in a fucking moment.
Well, perhaps this is based on a mistranslation. Kenneth Kitchen argues the original Hebrew word, without the later additional vowel points, can simply be understood to mean the land of the Kaziites, or Kashu.
So of course you can understand it to be whatever you want it to be. You know, well, we'll take this language that has no vowels, and since it has no vowels, we could just make it whatever. I know that it says otherwise, but we want it to fit in with this. So it's not Kush, it's Kaziite. I know it doesn't really work, but hey, we need to grab at straws to make the Bible feel real, everybody. You know, like when you guys made up the word Jehovah, just because you didn't understand how the Hebrew language had changed over the years. Well, hey, so you want to complain? Well, maybe it's a mistranslation. It's a mistranslation. Oh, did you see? It's a mistranslation. Well, it's a mistranslation. So you say that, you know, oh, it's the mistranslation. The mistranslation made it wrong, and it's mistranslation because the scribes, they just fucked up sometimes. People are human. They make wrong mistakes. But not when it comes to spreading things through the oral. What? We tell the stories orally, and they stay exactly the same for hundreds of years. They don't change. It doesn't matter how many centuries it's been. They know exactly what Moses says because it's been passed down verbatim, word to word. Like, you know, it's fucking 101 stories in Dr. fucking Stone or whatever. Fuck off! The oral tradition, well, that's very accurate. The written one, well, you can see very obviously that it wasn't. But you can't obviously see that the oral one wasn't because it's oral. And it all arrived at the same thing anyway, so it must be correct. Otherwise, there'd be a giant fucking hole in my religion, and I couldn't stand to have that.
Which was in western Iran. Their original homeland appears to have been the Zagros Mountains before they later controlled the area of Babylon after the old Babylonian Empire fell. Satellite data also reveals a long river that wrapped around the Zagros Mountains that drained into the same river as the other three, which also correlates with the account of the Ghihon River in Genesis 2, coming from the land of Cash instead of Cush. So in fact, thanks to modern satellite imaging, we can see at one time 4 rivers did flow into one. However, many read the account in Genesis 2 to mean there was one river that split into 4. This has caused many to look for Eden in modern-day Turkey, but with little success of finding a river that split into 4, and 2 being the Tigris and Euphrates, and another flowing into a place of gold.
I love gold.
Sure. So, we take 2 different books that were written at 2 different times from the same language that evolves over time, much like the English language. Read Old English. Ye olde Englishy, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's very different. Now, in the English language, we have homonyms. We have homonyms. Words that are the same but have different meanings. Bat, bark, trunk, you know. One must also remember the humble homograph. Words that are spelt the same, but indeed sound different and have different meanings. Bow. Archery. Bow. So, considering that we don't know how ancient Hebrew sounded, maybe they were different words, and we didn't know that because we don't know how the language is spoken, and we wouldn't be able to tell if it was a homograph or not. So, maybe it's not a mistranslation. Maybe it's a number of things that words change over time because of common usage. Maybe it's just 2 different words that are spelt the same. Now, I get that you really gotta reach for straws to try and prove that Eden's real, because it's very hard to prove because it didn't exist. And, you know, so what time exactly are we taking the Hebrew from? We're just going to know when you're plucking the straw from, buddy, because you've got a big hay of straw, and you're plucking all of them, hoping that one of them says, I'm right, really, please, God, love me. And none of them say that it's really. Just keep on plucking, because, you know, God said that it had to be this way, but another man wrote a book. Lean not into your own understanding. Lean into the Lord's. So saith the Lord. So saith the Bible. But, you know, hey, scholars say differently, and it's okay for you and not for me. That's weird, isn't it?
But as we have noted in our previous video, the Hebrew can be quite ambiguous. The same word is used to refer to the end of something, specifically the end of a long pole.
So headwaters and end of poles, they obviously mean similar things. So you can obviously just swap them out interchangeably as much as you want. Well, I know Kings was written later than Genesis, so it might have a different meaning, or it might be 2 different words that are spelled the same, you know, because they don't have vowels and it's harder to see. But hey, it was in this book. This guy said it. Did you not see that Bob Sauer said it or whatever? You know, like, come on. God damn it. If only I'd realized that if we just flip it around, it's fine. It's just the opposite.
I'm not going to stand here and bore you with the details, but as you're about to write down your verdict, I feel it's my duty to inform you that in exactly 5 seconds, it will officially become opposite day.
God's real, God isn't real. Done! It's the opposite. It was one river that turned into 4, but really, what they meant to say was that it was 4 rivers that turned into 1 and then were flooded. By the Lord!
Ease up there, Ace. Everyone's tempted to think they're an expert.
So, we're going to end it here for today. We'll be back next week with the next part. Oh yeah.